Okay. Hey, thank you all for coming. I'm Margaret Wurtenberg. I am the virtual president of the League of Women Voters of Weston. Thank you very much for, thank you. And we're here today to have lunch, of course, but in addition, it's called the Betty Hill Forum afterwards. And I was not the originator or the president at the time, that was Helen. But we have a real conviction that she did, at least, that we should look further away and think about bigger things than we do when we just do our usual league thing for our local governments. So this Betty Hill Forum this year will be terrific. Betty Hill, when she was growing up, anyway, when she got to be voting age, on her 100th birthday, the Bridgeport Post called her and asked her, and she said, "Who did you vote for in your first vote?" And she said, "Calvin Coolidge." That wasn't a very good choice. So anyway, but I just, now that you're all here, and I think I hear food clanking around in there, getting delivered, and have a wonderful luncheon, and afterwards we'll have our speech from our wonderful person here. There you go. Okay.
Hello, everybody. Hate to interrupt your conversations, but we're going to start our presentation. My name is Carol Baldwin, and I'm a proud member of the steering committee of the Weston League of Women Voters. I always say we're a bipartisan, but we're a nonpartisan organization in Weston. And I got involved in the league partially because I felt, probably about 7 years ago, that the world was becoming too polarized. And I really wanted to participate in an organization that is made up of Republicans, Democrats, and independents, and we all work together to try to provide education about the issues issues affecting our community, as well as introducing folks to the people who serve our community. We have a Speak Up, where we have the elected and appointed officials in our town have an open mic where anyone can ask them whatever, often a lot of questions about recycling, or various things, yeah. I think our role is become even more important without a printed town newspaper. We have an online paper, but I think leagues across the country where local newspapers are failing or gone really have an important role to get information to voters in a nonpartisan way. And just, when to vote, how to vote, all that's changing. So I'm very, very proud to be involved in this organization. So my dad would have been about 100 years old, I think, maybe this year. And he was of the generation that fought in World War II. Grew up in poor circumstances, but he came out of World War II saying, like, how can we prevent this from ever happening again? What can be done? And so he became a diplomat, and he served our country as a public servant, which I love that word, and very proudly. And his aim was to prevent armed conflict. And we are a nonpartisan organization, but I'll take a little step. This is just from me. He'd be rolling in his grave right now of what's going on in the world. The State Department has been totally gutted. But anyway, that's just coming from me, not from the League. So I was very interested when a friend of mine who works for Save the Children presented me with this book. Dignity is a central role in resolving conflict. And so I'm really proud to have as our speaker today Donna HICKS. She is a professor at Harvard. She's an international negotiator and respected author. She is an associate at the Weatherhead Center for International Affairs at Harvard University and has worked extensively on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. She was also a consultant to the BBC, where she co-facilitated encounters between victims and perpetrators of the Northern Irish conflict with Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And I think it's pretty darn cool that the foreword of her book is written by Archbishop Tutu. So when we've been talking, she says she works with religious groups all over the country. She works with schools in terms of conflict resolution. And she works with journalists, which I think that's really interesting too, in how they can report on things not just about bombing and deaths, but positive things in terms of resolving conflict. Today, she will present her talk, which is called Leading with Dignity. It will be focusing on the essential role of dignity in resolving conflict and how to bring out the best in people in times of crisis. So, Donna, please join us. Thank you for coming.
But what about that lunch? Was that amazing how we started with that lunch? So whoever chose that and picked that out, thank you, thank you, thank you. And to the chef, please, the servers, would you please say, I want to say thank you to you. Thank you. Be sure you tell the chef how great it was. Okay. Well, I am honestly thrilled to be here. I have given this talk that I'm about to present to you all over the world, actually. But there's something about the League of Women Voters that just reached my heart, right? I just thought, this is something I want to support. So I'm delighted to be here and to meet all of you. I know I've talked to many of you, but not everyone. But it's a joy to see a community gathering like this. And this kind of event where people get together and we, talk about things that really matter to us. I'm just so grateful to the League for convening everyone. Helen called me first, and then Carol. And so I just want to give recognition and thanks to the two of you for all that you've done to bring me here. So thank you. Yeah, and I'm going to talk to you about leading with dignity, and it's really leading our lives with dignity. If I were in the corporate world, which I do go into all the time, leading with dignity would be a perfect title. But in this sense, I think we're talking about how do we lead our lives with dignity? How do we treat each other so that we bring out the best in each other, not the worst? And so, without further ado, I'm going to just tell you a bunch of stories, actually. I'm going to give you a lot of information, but I'm going to tell you how I arrived at my understanding of this critical part of our shared humanity, the role dignity plays in our lives. And so I was I'm still at Harvard, and my organization there was often asked to go into really hot conflicts, like the Middle East, for example. But I also worked for 10 years in Sri Lanka, worked in Cambodia, worked in Libya, worked in Syria, Northern Ireland. And so wherever we would go to try to facilitate conversations between warring parties, that one thing happened every single time we convened a group. It didn't matter whether it was the Middle East or Asia, Africa. It didn't matter where we were. And the one thing that happened consistently is that there would always be a blow-up at the table. Always an explosive moment with one or two of the parties, both of the parties often. And because the approach that we took was what we called a social psychological approach to resolving conflict. We looked at the political issues that divided the people. We have to, if you're in the Middle East, you have to talk about the settlements, and you have to talk about where Jerusalem is going to be the capital, and you have to talk about refugees. You have to talk about all those things. But we were more concerned with the deeper human issues that were driving this conflict. And as I just said, no matter where we were, the same thing would keep happening where somebody would blow up. And I would say to them, I would say, oh my gosh, let's say it was you. What's your name? Pam. Pam, let's say it was Pam. And I would say, oh, Pam, my gosh, what just happened? That was such an emotional reaction. Would you mind sharing it with us? What was going on for you? And Pam would say, emotions? This isn't about emotions. This is about justice. This is about identity. This is about... I said, okay, sorry, Pam. No, sorry. I'll never use that word again. And truly, it was an emotional tsunami that actually happened. And so then the next time this happened, I was in Sri Lanka. I never forget this. Same exact thing. But meanwhile, I was thinking, what word could I use to describe? I can't use emotions anymore. So I actually went back to Harvard and convened a group that looked at trauma and the role trauma was playing in these conflicts. Deeper issues. And so I thought, okay, and I got Harvard's best trauma people, Judith Herman, I don't know if any of you have ever heard of her, and Susanna Badian, and we had convened this group, and they told me how I should present this stuff the next time it happened. So, okay, in Sri Lanka, bingo, there goes the explosion. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. Wow, that was such a powerful response. I have a feeling maybe there's some underlying trauma there that you'd like to talk about. And he said to me, trauma? No. This is not about trauma. This is about justice. This is about... Okay. 2 strikes. Now I'm in real deep trouble. What am I? I'm either going to have to ignore those big explosive reactions, or I'm going to have to come up with the right word. So, I worked with Archbishop Tutu, as Carol pointed out. We did this amazing work, like mini Truth and Reconciliation Commission sessions up with the BBC, and they televised it. You could go online and watch it, too. It's called Facing the Truth. And he taught me something about what to do when you're in a really bad place and you don't know what to do. And he said, what you should do is follow my tradition in my tribe back in South Africa. He said, we believe that our people, our loved ones, are just waiting for us, the ones who have passed. They are just waiting for us to help us, but they have to be invited down. So people who have died, your ancestors, your friends, your loved ones. And so at that point, when I'm trying to figure out what this word is, I'm thinking of Tutu telling me, all right, who can I ask to help? So I would get my grandmother there. I'd get my grandfather and all my favorite ancestors. And I swear to God, I'm walking down the street at Harvard, right across the bookstore at Harvard Square. And I said, okay, folks, I need a word. And I looked in the bookstore window, and there was a book about dignity. I don't know what it was, some human rights book about dignity. And I said, oh, that's it. It's dignity. This is what I can say. So I get all goosebumpy when I even tell this story because it was so powerful. So I went to the next intervention I did. I think I was in Colombia. Yes, I was in Colombia. And I thought to myself, I'm intervening in a conflict between the military and the Department of Defense. Well, they call it Ministry of Defense there. There was this big squabble. It was all over the news. It was really beginning to threaten the security of the country because they were in the midst of a civil war. And so a friend of mine who spent time with us up at Harvard called, and she's from Columbia, she called me and she said, Donna, you've got to come down here. You've got to help us with this conflict because things are really going to blow up. And she said, do you mind doing a communication skills workshop? So between the military and the defense ministry? And I said, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. So anyway, she said, just get down here. We'll talk about it when you get down here. So I hopped on a plane. At 30,000 feet, somewhere over Miami, I realized I've got to do a dignity workshop. I have to try out this idea that there's something going on that's really below the surface and that this might work in helping resolve this conflict. So I get there, and she's there, and we're anybody been to Cartagena? Does anybody know that beautiful? Oh, you've got to all go. Put that on your bucket list. Yes, yes. There must be a League of Women Voters there somewhere. So anyway, I get into the room. The military's sitting on one side of the table. All the defense ministry was over here on the other side of the table. And little did I know, the president was going to show up just to welcome me and say thank you for coming. And so he comes in and he does that. He's, oh, Dr. Hicks, thank you so much for coming. And I'm so happy you're going to do a communication skills workshop here for my colleagues. I think they really need it. And I turned to him and I said, yeah, Mr. President, I don't think I'm going to do a communication skills workshop. Now, mind you, he was just going to introduce me and go back to Bogota because he had a big meeting with Congress back there. And so when I said, I'm sorry, I don't think I'm going to do a communication skills workshop, I think what I'm going to do is a workshop that focuses on dignity. And the workshop that focuses on how we react when our dignity is being trampled on. Because I have a feeling this is what's happening here in this room. And he looks at me and he says, you're doing a dignity workshop? And I said, yeah, I am. I really, my gut just tells me this is what this group needs. He turns to his lieutenant next to him and he says, cancel my meetings in Bogota. I'm staying here for this. Mind you, 30,000 feet, just 2 hours ago, I just came up with this idea. All right, so I had my ancestors on my side, by my side. I talked about how we're going to focus on dignity and especially focus on stories about times when your dignity was violated by the other side. And stories about times when you felt you might have violated the dignity of somebody on the other side. And so everybody was like, oh, this is pretty interesting. I mean, the generals who wouldn't stop looking at their phones finally gave me eye contact, So they were really interested. Fast forward 2 days, we finished with the workshop. It was brilliant, I have to say. It really worked. And this one general who really didn't give me eye contact for a couple of hours, he came up to me and he shook my hand. He said, Donna, I was really suspicious of who are you, this Harvard professor coming down and telling us what to do here? And he said, but you know what? You did help us mend this relationship and I'm really grateful. And then he said, but I think even more important than that, I believed you saved my marriage. He's thinking of all the ways he's been violating his wife for all these years. So that was when I knew I had to do something with this concept of dignity. I knew I had to. And so I started writing a book, and I wrote my first book, Dignity, Its Essential Role, the one that Carol has, Essential Role in Resolving Conflict. And when it got published by Yale University Press, right here from the great state of Connecticut, I thought my conflict resolution colleagues are going to love this. I think because I thought I found a missing link to resolving conflict with this deeper dignity issue. And Then I got calls from the corporate world, from healthcare, from education, both K-12 and higher ed, NGOs of all kinds, but that I expected. But what I didn't expect was faith communities. I got asked by faith communities because what I have done in this book, and I'm about to present to you, if I shut up for a minute and stop telling stories, I'm going to present to you the fact that I have figured out ways to look at our lives and look at how dignity, what it looks like in our everyday life. And we have a term called operationalized dignity. We operationalize, so now we know what it looks like because I did my research. So let me just say one last thing about dignity and why it actually works for these conflicts that I had been involved in. And my profession, and when we teach this, Conflict Resolution 101, we always say we're going to try to find common ground. I mean, you've heard this a million times, right? I mean, this is not just for students of conflict resolution. We all think that if we could only find common ground, we could help resolve this problem. Well, I don't believe that anymore. I think what we need is higher ground. And what do I mean by that? I say that because this is something, this desire, what I even call it a yearning to be treated with dignity, is a universal human desire. I don't care where you come from, how you grew up, what continent you were born on, we all want to be treated as if we matter. It's just part of our shared humanity. This is the one thing, if we can take dignity and elevate it to that higher ground, give people tools to talk about dignity, to learn about dignity, to understand the profound impact it has when we're not treated with dignity, and to watch the joyfulness that does result when we feel our dignity has been honored. It's a wonderful feeling when somebody, looks at us and says, "Hey, yeah, of course you've got dignity, of course." So it's a unifying factor. It's a unifying concept, but it's on higher ground. The common ground's a mess. Let's just say it, especially here in our country right now. We've got a mess. We need dignity so badly. We need to elevate this and liberate dignity within us. Because when I go around doing these events and these talks, most people haven't even accepted their own dignity. And my first order of business, this is what Tutu also shared with me, he said, you've got to get people to accept and embrace their own dignity. Don't wait for somebody on the outside to show you that you've got dignity. You were born with it, Tutu says to me. You were born with dignity. And he said, I remember he said to me, Nelson Mandela, he wrote a book called Long Walk to Freedom. Did you ever read that book? Oh my God, it's beautiful. And in it, he said, this was when he was taken into Robben Island and imprisoned there for 27 years. He said the first thing he did when he got into that prison was watched the guards to try to figure out what the guards were up to. How are we going to be treated here by these guards? And he said, it didn't take me but 5-10 minutes to figure out that they tried to strip us of our dignity. They treated us like animals, like they treated their dogs better than they treated us. And he said, but you know what? I was relieved. And I'm thinking, what? And he said, I was relieved because I knew that I wasn't going to give up my dignity for any man or any institution, any prison. Nobody was going to take my dignity away from me because it's in my hands and my hands only. And oh my God, that hit me in such a deep way because he said, for those of you who are members of faith communities, This is the part of our divinity inside us, is the God-given gift of oh, well, we have I forgot he's a minister. You could probably come up here and say this better than I. But you know what? I mean, it's really, that changed things for me. It shifted so enormously to know that you don't have to look for your dignity on the outside. It's in there. Claim it, elevate it, celebrate it, So that's my gift from Tutu, and he wanted me to tell you that today. Okay, so let's get on with what my presentation. Let's see. Why dignity? Oh my gosh. I love this quote by John Nesbitt. He said, "The greatest breakthroughs of the 21st century will not occur because of technology, but because of an expanded concept of what it means to be human." And I'm looking at that, and I said, this kind of sums up what I'm trying to do with this dignity work. Because if we can look where we are with technology. AI is like taking over everything. But we have to catch up to that. We have to understand what supports our humanity and what is destructive to our humanity. And if we can get dignity, elevate this concept in the consciousness of everyone, not to mention just our political actors and our leaders in the world, if we can raise that consciousness and understand that this is our shared humanity, this desire for dignity. And if we don't protect it, we're in very big trouble. So what does it mean to be human? And he says, or he didn't say this, but I believe that there's three basic truths in answer to his question about what does it mean to be human. Number one, we all desire to be treated with dignity. That's a shared desire. Number two, when we're not treated with dignity, we suffer. And number three, when we are treated with dignity, we flourish as human beings. Not only do we flourish individually, but we flourish collectively. It's the stuff that connects us, the shared desire for dignity. And when we can give that to each other, when we can recognize that in each other, oh my gosh, the power is just extraordinary, honestly. And the other thing about this dignity concept and what it means to be human, the ignorance surrounding this idea of you would think that this is something that we learn in schools, from kindergarten. But, just this whole notion that we are worthy no matter what, there's such ignorance surrounding it. And I'll never forget going into the corporate world when I've had these wonderful people I was working with, these leadership teams, these corporate leadership teams, and they would, say to me, "I don't know what's going on here in our culture, but we've got a real problem." And I said, well, you hired me to look at dignity. Do you think there's something going on there? And they would say, "Well, I don't know. That's why we hired you. We don't know about dignity." So I'm going to say more about that in a minute. But this idea that we all have dignity. When we don't get treated that way, we suffer. And when we do get treated that way, this is when we develop as human beings. Our humanity develops. So it should be, I think, at the forefront of our agendas, no matter what we're doing, no matter who we are, no matter what what we do in the world. So I'm going to try to convince you that that's the case. So let's see. So what is dignity? Okay, what words come to mind when you hear the word dignity? Yes, always is the first one. What else? Anybody else? Compassion is in there for sure. Worth. Yeah, being heard. Yep. Recognition. Yes. Being seen. All of that. Empathy is also a huge piece of it. Grace. Don't you love that word? Don't you love grace? So here, yes, Margaret. What? Calm. Oh, that's nice. I like that. It's the first time I heard that one. I'm going to quote you on that one. So I realized when I started writing this first book, the Dignity book in Conflict, I realized that I had to come up with a simple definition because, you know, it always emerges around deep emotional reactions. Remember I told you about all of the people I worked with at those negotiating tables. If we can't make this understandable to a 5-year-old, then we're in trouble. So I figured, I did an analysis as a good Harvard academic. I studied theology, I studied philosophy, and went back and forth and tried to figure out a good definition. But then I realized, you know what? Just take that Harvard hat off and be a human being for a minute. And I decided that our dignity is our inherent value and worth, and our inherent vulnerability. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is that we're all born with dignity. We're all born worthy. But what's the vulnerability piece there? Well, just like we're physically vulnerable, I mean, you know, somebody could come up and shoot me and I'd be dead, or just injure me, you know, beat me up or something. We know that we're vulnerable physically. We have an entire legal system to protect us from that. But the fact is, we're also born vulnerable to having our dignity trashed and violated. Yes, we're all born with it, but here's the other thing. We're not born knowing how to act like it sometimes, all right? So that's the dignity education piece. We have to learn how to treat each other so that we don't end up in this mess that we're in right this minute. All the polarization in our communities, it's just tragic what's going on. Not to mention here, but in the world in general. Look at what's happening in the Middle East and in Asia. Anyway, so you get the picture. So here's the thing. I think it is definitely different from respect. I'll tell you why. Because Tutu says to me, you know, we're all born worthy. It's all just like your God-given worth. And you don't have to do anything to have dignity. You just have to take care of it. You have to be sure other people's dignity is taken care of. And so he said to me, but respect, on the other hand, has to be earned. You earn respect, but dignity is part of our DNA. It's like our inherent quality of being a human being. We all have it. So that's quite an interesting distinction that he makes, I think, between dignity and respect. So I thought, okay, this is really good. But how am I going to convince people that we're all born worthy, you know, if you're not like a Tutu of the world or something? And so I decided, oh, what happened to my babies? Oh, shoot, I don't have my babies in here. Okay, so just imagine that I have a slide of 2 babies, all right? Precious little babies. One is black, one is white. And I can't believe it. This is the thing that people love this slide. I don't know. So I say, okay, look at these 2 babies. Are you going to tell me that they are not born worthy? Are you going to tell me that, you know, some of them are deficient or inferior or what? No, we're all born this way. We're all born precious and valuable. I said, in fact, we're born invaluable. We're priceless, we humans, and we're irreplaceable. So what do you do with something that's invaluable, priceless, and irreplaceable? What do we do? Yeah, you treat it with dignity, exactly. You nurture it, you love it, you care for it, you know. And the thing is that people's dignity needs to be nurtured just as much as our kids, little ones especially. They need care and attention, but we never outgrow our need for care and attention, we humans. We love it. And it's the glue that holds us together when we feel like our dignity is being honored. And so I think you get the picture, right, with these 2 babies. And then, so once I was giving a talk to a bunch of middle school teachers, and I showed that picture of those two precious infants. They were probably like 3 months old or something, maybe even younger. And I said to these teachers, what happened? What happens when we grow up? Why do we lose touch with that preciousness? How do we lose touch with that? And this one middle school teacher looked at me and said, adolescence. That's what happens. So, but I've been called Pollyanna and everything, but I think we have to get back to that preciousness when we look at each other, when we experience each other. If we could only get back to that sense, like, oh my gosh, what a wonder this little baby is. What a wonder Bam is here. This is wonderful. Look at her. Look at, she's beaming. So that's what my goal is here. I mean, my goal is twofold: to end human suffering on this critical piece that we can do so much better at, and to try to get us back in touch with that remarkable sense of value and worth that we all come into the world with. It's not, I didn't have to get a PhD and go to Harvard to figure that out either, But it is a good platform because the doors open when I say I'm from Harvard, so that's great, right? Let's use it to whatever we need to use to get this dignity consciousness up there. Okay, so here's the thing. I did put my Harvard hat back on when I was writing this book because I realized, yes, I have wonderful stories. Yes, I've had wonderful successes. Yes, I have insight into dignity. But if people are going to believe me, feel like I have any credibility, I'm going to have some research, some data to support my notions about this. And so what did I do? I really suffered for a while because I couldn't figure out what to do. And then somebody said to me, one of my friends, he said, Donna, have you explored the research in neuroscience about human relationships? And I said, no, what? Tell me. And so he told me about this couple out in UCLA, Naomi Eisenberg and Matt, oh God, what's Matt's last name? Matt and Naomi. And what they were doing was they put people in these brain scans, the MRIs that you go in there and it's so claustrophobic and everything. Well, they also had a video camera above them so that they could watch scenes of people interacting with each other. And what the neuroscientists wanted to know was, what's going on in the brain during certain social types of interaction? And so what they found was that when people were, they were viewing a video where someone had fallen or somebody pushed somebody and fell and broke their arm, well, what they discovered was that what happened in the brain was pretty predictable, that the part of the brain that was illuminated was what's called the limbic system, the amygdala. It's the ancient pain center. It's where all the deep emotions are felt and all of that. And of course, it's, they were on fire when this person was experiencing a physical injury. Okay, so that's okay, but that wasn't the interesting part. That was predictable. What they found that was so interesting was that when people were watching experiences of people having their dignity violated, the same area of the brain was on fire, as if they had experienced a physical injury. Think about that. What do we do when we have a physical injury? Well, we go into the hospital, we get a cast. Look, he's got that nice cast on, and everybody feels sorry for you. Oh, I'm so sorry you broke your arm. But what happens? The brain doesn't know the difference between a wound to its dignity and a physical wound because it shows up the same way. We don't get any, oh, I'm so sorry you just had your dignity violated. There's no ER to run into. There's no 911 call for dignity violations. If you're lucky enough to have a therapist who's trained in this mindset, you could go to them. But we just are, this is part of the ignorance. And this research, and this is done back in the early 2000s, and now it's been replicated. There are people who specialize in this stuff now. They call it affective neuroscience. Like the Naomi and Matt Lieberman, Naomi and Matt called it social pain that we inflict on each other. So if this is the case, back to the corporate world, when I was meeting with all of those guys, and they were all guys, on the executive leadership team, they said, "Oh, well, your stuff is so touchy-feely, Donna. They said, it's nice, tell people just be nice, be nice. But we need hardcore evidence," they said to me. "We need evidence. If we're going to do an intervention, we want evidence-based work." So, okay, flip on this slide, and they're like, "Oh." Their jaws drop. And they said, "You mean the brain doesn't know the difference between getting a physical injury and a dignity injury?" I said, "That's exactly what I'm saying." And we're doing nothing about all those dignity violations. We're just like, it's part of the culture that's implicit. You can just we don't have to call out dignity violations. So this is when I realized, okay, the guy said, this corporate guy, he said, "This is really wonderful, Donna. I'm sorry I was disparaging, calling your work touchy-feely and all that." I said, "Hey, don't worry, but now it's so important that you said that, because now you see the contrast of what the truth is and what you were thinking it was. Just be nice, So anyway, I realized that I had to come up with ways that people could have a picture in their mind of what it feels like to have your dignity violated. And so I actually went and interviewed people all over the world and asked them to tell me about a story when they felt their dignity had been violated, and also tell me a story about when they felt their dignity had been honored. And just as a point of fact, maybe 10% of them had a dignity honoring story, and 90% of them had a dignity violating story. And so I got them to tell me about what it felt like. And so no matter where I was, Asia, Africa, North America, Europe, the people there were these themes, these emotional themes and reactions that came out. And I call them the 10 elements of dignity. The first one being identity. People want their identity accepted, no matter their race, their religion, their ethnicity, their sexual orientation. People want to be seen as equal in dignity, no matter what all those other things are. And when they're not, and so people say to me oftentimes, "Well, what about power, in these relationships? So what if your boss has so much more power?" I said, "Well, then your boss has even more responsibility to be sure that you're treated with dignity, because they have that power. And that power should be used to empower others, not disempower others." Okay, recognition. I gotta be sure I can see this. I am reading it in reverse in the mirror, so not that I don't know my 10 elements, but okay, recognition. Who was that? Somebody said recognition over here, yes. People want to be recognized especially in the corporate environment or any environment where you're an employee and there's a boss, but they want recognition for having done a good job at something, and this was universal. They're all universal. But this one especially, people really need to feel like they are being seen by like you were saying about being seen by their bosses and seeing the good contributions, the work that they have done. Acknowledgement. This is probably one of the most important, I would say. Well, they're all important, but so when I was working with Tutu up in Northern Ireland, I was watching him deal with people. I was just like observing how amazing he was at even honoring the dignity of these horrible perpetrators who committed horrible, horrible crimes. Like one guy had his favorite way of killing people was to take a cement block and smash the heads of. And I said to Tutu, "You know what? I don't think I'm going to be able to sit there with this guy because he scares me." And anyway, Tutu said to me, "You can't see his dignity?" I said, "No." He said, "Keep on digging," is what he said to me. So anyway, acknowledgement, I said to Tutu, look, you are considered the champion of reconciliation all over the world. You stopped a bloodbath in South Africa. You were so amazing what you were able to do. And I said, what do you think it takes to put the past to rest? Let's say you were treated really badly. What does it take to put the past to rest and move on in your life? And he said, well, and I quote, he said, Donna, when people have been roughed up, they need acknowledgement of the suffering they've endured. That hit me like a ton of bricks. You need to say to somebody, you don't even have to be the person doing it. If you're sitting at a table in a staff meeting and somebody violates poor Pam's dignity again, you need to, we need to go up to Pam afterward and say, oh, Pam, that was awful what happened to you. I'm so sorry that you shouldn't have, that was wrong. And Tutu just kept saying, help people recognize the importance of acknowledgement, because the suffering doesn't go away. It just stays in there, inside, until you have it acknowledged. And when your suffering is acknowledged and legitimized, that's the path to healing, he said. That is when we start healing, was when somebody says, oh, what happened to you was wrong, and I am so sorry. It should have never happened. And, people feel really bad, and I say, look, you may feel bad, but you're not bad. Something bad happened to you. You see that distinction? You may feel bad, but you're not bad. Something bad happened to you. So that's Tutu's take on acknowledgement. Inclusion, well, we all know this. We know how important inclusion is in feeling a sense of belonging. Safety, is that the last one on the list? There, yeah. Safety, well, this is not just physical safety. This is psychological safety as well, and I'll say more about that in a minute. Yeah, that's the end, right? Or is it? Oh, fairness. Oh, I can't see it. Okay. Fairness, right. Well, that sort of goes without saying, doesn't it? We all know about fairness. Little kids know when we, say we're parents and we give our kids candy or something, first thing they do is look to see, did I get the same amount? So fairness is something really in our blood. Okay, safety, I already said something about. Well, independence, right, independence. Well, people don't want to have their freedom restricted. That's pretty much what that is. And understanding. We humans are so quick to judge. We can do judgment. We were talking about this at the table here. We can do judgment in a nanosecond, and even without any information about people, we make these quick snap judgments. And people want to be, like you said, people want to be heard. People want an opportunity to talk about what their experiences are, and so that others can have a deeper understanding of what they're all about. So that's understanding. And benefit of the doubt, this is one that my husband has a very hard time with, I have to tell you. Because, we were on our honeymoon, this is so funny, and we were walking through the English countryside, and there was a farm with a sign, little handmade sign, and it said, "Come in, we're serving tea." And I'm going to Rick. I said, oh, let's go have tea. He said, don't you dare go in there. You don't know what those people are all about. And of course, they all just wanted to serve tea. But he's had a lot of trauma in his life, so he doesn't give people the benefit of the doubt so much. Oh, and by the way, he also wanted me to share with you that I'm a recovering dignity violator. And he says, I will come to any of your talks and tell them how you know how to violate dignity. You can do it. And that you're in recovery. And then he admits also that he's in recovery too. So, but, we take out our worst selves on our spouses, don't we? I mean, it's not great, but it's embarrassing. Yeah. He says, yes, the Princess of Peace here. She knows how to violate dignity. Okay, finally, accountability. We want to be apologized to when somebody violates our dignity. You know, but those words are sometimes the hardest words we can ever get out of our mouths. And I have to admit, you know, when I'm caught red-handed in a dignity violation with Rick, with my husband, saying, oh, I'm sorry, shouldn't have done that. You know, it's so hard to get out. But it's not just I'm sorry. It's I'm sorry and I'm not going to do it. I'm going to try very hard not to do it again. Because we can just keep seeking forgiveness forever and ever. But if we don't change our behavior, right? Okay. So that's that. And so I look at these 10 elements and I think, you know what? These are guidelines for a good relationship. You know, if you want to strengthen a relationship, just be sure that all of these elements are intact. Oh, by the way, when I first went into the corporate world, I showed these elements to a lot of employees, and I said to them, tell me, of these 10 elements, which one do you think is violated the most in your workspace? Who wants to guess what was the one element that 80% of the people said was their worst violation? What do you think it was? Nope. What? Bingo. What's your name? What? Christine said safety. 80% reported safety. And I was shocked, and I would say to them, safety? What do you mean? People are going around beating you up? And they say, no, we don't feel safe to speak up. When something bad happens, like our boss treats us badly, we're terrified. And I said, well, say more, tell me more about it. And they said, well, if we told our boss, you know, gave him feedback about the way we felt when he ashamed us in front of everybody at the staff meeting, that, you know, we might not get a good performance review. We might even, you know, lose our jobs. It could be career suicide if we spoke up like that. And I thought, oh my gosh, here we hit a milestone right here in this. Psychological safety. People don't feel safe to speak up. And so we did a whole bunch of work on how to give people feedback in a way that didn't feel like a weapon. But that shocked me. I don't know if it shocks you, but people say, well, it surprised me, but it didn't shock me. Because we've all probably had that experience of once or at some point in our lives. But back to these 10 elements, yeah, as I said, that strengthens relationships, but if you want to end a relationship, all you have to do is violate one, and that's when trust breaks down. Even one single violation can break trust. And if you're in an environment, in a community, or in an organization, and you know you want people to trust you, and you want that kind of relationship, well, this is the fastest route to both trust and safety. And last but not least, it's the fastest route to make a human connection with others. No matter where you are, you can make that connection by honoring dignity. And Helen and I were talking about, you know, you can do this with the checkout counter at your grocery store. You can have a nice conversation with somebody, you know, who's checking your groceries out, and that can make you make them feel good, and you could see there's that positive connection. Barbara Fredrickson, a neuroscientist who studies the emotions of social interaction, she talks about the neuroscience of love. How do you create a loving connection with somebody? And she's the one that says, she calls it positive resonance, that our bodies react when somebody treats us well, and there's an energy flow that comes out of that. And so, yes, you were right, Helen. You know, this is just so amazing how powerful it is and how we can connect with others, even if we disagree with them. That's another, I should come back and do a disagreeing with dignity session. You and I could do it together, yeah. All right, so I don't know, I'm talking a lot, and I know we're going to have a Q&A after, but does anybody have any reaction to these 10 elements? Yeah.
I just want to relate something that was an aha moment for me.
Oh, yeah.
For those of you who have seen the movie A Beautiful Mind,
Yeah.
John Nash, who was a very unwell man at Princeton, but brilliant, and he had a real desire to earn and be recognized with the Nobel Prize for Economics.
Yeah.
And he was interviewed after the movie, and after, of course, the book was published before the movie. And I think it was Morley Safer asked him, was anything different for you after you earned the prize? And he said, yes, his symptoms were reduced markedly.
Oh, that recognition.
And I thought, that's the healing thing you mentioned.
Yeah, it's healing. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Anybody else want to say anything? Let me just see what I want. Oh, yeah, I just want to tell this story. I got another story. Oh, well. Let me just finish this stuff. And I got like 10 more minutes. All right. So I used to teach. I retired from teaching at Columbia. I used to go there on weekends and teach a weekend-long course to people affiliated with Columbia. And there was a woman, let me wait a minute. And there was a woman in the class who was an executive with a high, really high-powered company in New York, and she was the HR executive. And she was getting a PhD from Columbia, and she was focusing on wisdom. All right, remember that because it's relevant. So all my other students, I had about 25 in every class. And when I present this work, they're all like, oh, wow, yeah. And everybody's really vocal, and they're talking about it, talking with each other. But this woman, Davy Floyd, her name was, she didn't say a word the whole time, the first session of the class. And I thought, geez, what's going on with Davy? So I made a mental note, go to her during the break and ask her if everything's okay. Because she was literally the only one who didn't say anything. And so right before I was going to take a break, all of a sudden I see her hand go up. Her hand goes up. And we're all looking around thinking, oh, what's Davy going to say? And Davy said, well, Donna, I have a feeling that I love what you're doing. I love this dignity work. I think it's great. I'm going to use it in my company. And she said, thing is, I believe that dignity is much bigger than you think it is. Really? And all the students were like, really? And she says, yes, it's not just an impersonal, individual issue of feeling your worth and wanting that in relationships and all that. She said, I think dignity is given to us all in a sacred trust when we're born. And she said, and meanwhile, we're all like, oh my God, what else is she going to say? This is so great. And she said, yeah, I think it's a sacred trust. She said, we certainly have to claim our own dignity. We certainly have to honor the dignity in others. And we have to honor the dignity of the universe and of the world around us. We're not separate from all that. She said, dignity is about life itself, she said. Remember, she's studying wisdom? How about that? Dignity is bigger than you thought it was. I said, absolutely, absolutely. So here she is, Davy Floyd. I was blown away by that intervention. And it actually fueled me into thinking about, don't look there, okay, about dignity. And it made me realize that, yes, it was bigger than I originally thought it was. I did really think of it in individual terms and in relational terms. And so I've come to the conclusion that it's about three things, dignity, thanks to Davy Floyd. The first is connection. The second is connection. And the third is connection. Okay, so what do I mean by that? So in terms of Tutu's warning to me to always tell people this, the first connection is to our own dignity. If we don't have that clearly intact, if we don't recognize our worth, our God-given worth, as he says, then that's the work that we have to do. We also have to have a connection to other people's dignity. If I'm a human being and I have dignity, all of you do too. Everybody does. This is part of our shared humanity. And the third connection, which I think is so powerful, is to the world around us, to the external world, to the environment. And my students have actually kind of created their own meaning for this. They say, you know, yeah, this is good about being connected to the outer world. He said, I want to live a life, this one guy in particular, he said, I want to live a life where I'm contributing to the greater good. I don't want to just make a living for myself, but I want to do something to further humanity, you know, to bring us closer to this dignity consciousness. And the young people that I work with say they want a life of meaning and purpose, and this gives them that purpose. And to try to fulfill these three levels of connection. And you know, I work with the Human Flourishing program up at Harvard, and I told them that I think that one way to describe flourishing is to see the extent to which people have these three connections all in alignment. Because once these three connections are in alignment, that's when we live a fulfilled life. I think that's fulfillment when we do that. Okay, I promise you this is the last of the important information, because what I'm basically giving you now are the building blocks of what I call the dignity model. So somebody once said to me, Donna, have you explored E.O. Wilson's work? You know E.O. Wilson, anybody? Yeah, famous evolutionary biologist. And I said, no, she said, well, if you're a conflict resolution person and you don't know this is amazing stuff. And I said, oh my gosh, I had to read it. I read not only his work, but all these other people who are writing about evolutionary biology and psychology. And what I learned is that we have these hardwired reactions that we feel when we're under threat. When somebody treats us badly, or when somebody is, you know, harming us physically, getting us, you know, like in times of war and stuff like that, the first thing we do is these self-preservation instincts get fired up. We don't even have to think about it. It's just an unconscious reaction. And so we all know about fight and flight. We've learned that in biology probably. But the fact is, these evolutionary biologists said we've got so many more of these hardwired instincts, these self-preservation instincts that get triggered in a nanosecond the minute we experience something's not right in the world. And so, like, what are those? Taking the bait. So when somebody comes at us or somebody violates their dignity, we want to return the harm. We want revenge. We want to get even. That's just a common, it's not, none of these are very dignified. Let me just say that. None of them. In fact, we have to figure out how to stop ourselves when these get going. So we take the bait. Help me, Pam, here. What's the next? Saving face. Oh, yeah. This is a big one. I always use Lance Armstrong as my example. Remember how he denied the fact that he was taking performance-enhancing drugs and when he did the Tour de France? Well, we try to save face when we hate, this is the other thing the biologists say, we don't like looking bad in the eyes of others. We'll cover up, we'll deceive, we'll do whatever it takes to not have to look bad. But, you know, face saving, and because you see it in the political arena all over the place now, everywhere in the world, right? But the problem with face saving is that usually the truth eventually comes out. And you look worse than you would have looked if you had just admitted, yeah, I did that, I made a mistake. And the truth is that when people admit to a wrongdoing, we have empathy for them. That's when the empathy starts kicking in. We think, oh my God, that was hard for him to do. I can't believe they did that. I'm so sorry, for them. Okay, so shirking responsibility, that goes with face saving. Instead of saying, yeah, I did it, no, we'll shirk it. False dignity is the next one. That's thinking our dignity comes from external sources, not something that's inside us always from the time of birth. False security is we think that, I got to stay with this job. I can't quit, even though my boss violates my dignity all the time. I need the money. Or in a relationship even. A lot of this research came from battered women's research, where they stay in a relationship with their husbands, and even though it was really hurtful and harmful. Avoiding confrontation. We humans hate conflict. We don't like it. And again, these are all characteristics of our shared humanity that get triggered under threat. Keep that in mind. So when I say we humans don't like conflict, it's for this reason. Because we don't like approaching people and talking about it. It's just, we're afraid we're going to get hurt again. Okay. Oh, yes. And it's always, Carol, it's never about me. It's always about you. Whenever something happens in our relationship, you made a mistake. You did it. Yeah. That's what we did. Avoiding? The next one is resisting feedback. Oh, we hate feedback. We hate it. We hate it. It's like, let me drink vinegar instead of getting feedback. I'd rather do that. Blaming and shaming others to deflect our guilt. These are just things that come automatically. These are almost like, somebody said, are you saying that we shouldn't take responsibility for these? I say, no, we just have to know this because, and E.O. Wilson says, we have to understand ourselves and the world if we're going to survive this. It's not just about survival instincts. If we don't understand that this is getting us into trouble in our relationships when we have these self-preservation reactions, it was just amazing. Let me just see what he said. It's quite a lovely quote. Oh, we have to understand ourselves and the world, not just survive it. That's pretty good, I thought. So here we have these 10 ways of protecting ourselves. Self-preservation is like, it comes up immediately as humans. But what we don't recognize is that the truth resides in vulnerability. When we're able to say, yes, I did that. Yes, I'm sorry. I made that mistake. I violated your dignity. That's where the truth resides. And if we're often so much more interested in self-preservation than the truth. So we've got to reprogram our brains. And fortunately, the neuroscientists help. We can do this. We can push the pause button. And this one neuroscientist said, all right, people say, take 10 deep breaths, or count to 10. And this neuroscientist said, no, you've got to take 10 deep breaths to calm down all that cortisol. And when she told me that, I said, well, how long does that take? And she said, about 90 seconds. And I said, 90 seconds? Are you kidding me? It usually takes me 90 days to get over something like that. So here we are. We've got this. This is our reality. We have these self-preservation instincts. They get us into trouble every time, all the time. But what do we do about it? Well, we've got to Jerome Barco says, biology is not destiny unless we ignore it. So we can't ignore this. We have to recognize it and acknowledge these instincts before we can stop them. Okay. Here's the thing, though. I can't read my... What if the self we're preserving is in desperate need of change? What do you think? Tough. Tough is right. Tough is right. So what are we doing? All right, I promise you this is the last. Sort of. Okay. So the other thing these evolutionary biologists are telling us is that in addition to being hardwired with these self-preservation instincts, we also, on the other side of our humanity, we have a hardwired desire to be connected with each other, We have a hardwired desire to be in relationship with one another and to empathize with one another, to create the sense that a shared sense of emotions, you know. So here, E.O. Wilson says, we're stuck. We humans are stuck in this dramatic tension between the desire to save face and to self-preserve and the desire to be connected with each other. And he says, which one do we think is going to win out? We have a choice here. Are we going to let self-preservation and survival instincts take over our consciousness? Or are we going to learn how to be in relationship with one another so that we're connected? And he thinks that we're going to choose love. That's what at the end of his life, he died not that long ago, maybe 5 years ago. But he chose love. Here he is, this famous biologist choosing love over some brain mechanism. So to me, that's so hopeful. We can all learn this. We can all do this. We can do this. I have seen little kids, 5 years old, learning from their teachers how to become dignity leaders. I swear to God, this teacher in Fort Worth, Texas, is teaching her third graders how to become dignity leaders, and they are so good at it. And so because it's the love. She said they learn how to love, basically, when they learn about dignity. So this is the last one. Okay, who's going to read it? Carol, read it for me.
Someday, after mastering the winds, the tides, and gravity, we shall harness the energies of love. And then, for a second time in the history of the world, we will have discovered fire. Pierre Chardin.
How about that? Thank you, Pierre Chardin. This is so fabulous. Oh, I get all tingly. This is where we're going, and we're doing it together. The fact that you are all here, I was so blown away that 55 of you are coming here. So I am going to ordain you all dignity agents. Yes, go out there and promote dignity into the world, and you can do it. You can do it, because we can do so much better than what we're doing now. We can. We're capable of it. We can do it. Okay, comments and questions, or just, yeah, yes.
I have a question.
What's your name?
Kim.
Kim, okay.
Thank you so much for this really insightful presentation, and I have a background in social work, and a lot of the things very relatable to how we were trained. What have you observed or you're feeling about how we are functioning in the area of all this technology and media, and more connection is done electronically over,
face-to-face,
virtual meetings and face-to-face, and is it, I think, are you seeing that impact the ability to relate with dignity?
Yeah, I think like social media especially, the things that we would say on social media that we'd never say when we're face-to-face with somebody, it's a danger, and it's a real danger. And I think one of my former students is studying the role of dignity in AI, how do we preserve human dignity when advancing our understanding of AI. She's like on fire with this topic. But she believes that if we don't have this understanding of dignity, that whether it's social media or other technologies, AI especially, we're doomed. Because if we don't have that power to connect with each other the way, Barbara Fredrickson was talking about, that exchange of energy that happens because it's not just like some touchy-feely thing. We have mirror neurons in our brain up here in the frontal lobe, and these mirror neurons get activated when we have an emotional exchange. And if that emotional exchange is positive, the way Helen was talking about it, that's great. But if we don't have that capacity, and we don't with social media, we don't with AI, we have to fight like hell to get this in the conscious. And she's doing it. She's leading so you can feel a little bit hopeful, because there are lots of people, young people, who are working on this, and she's like all over the world giving talks about this. So Fingers crossed, we'll win this battle. Margaret.
I just wanted to make everybody feel perhaps more positive about these things. I'm in New Hampshire now, and we meet with students, and they want to meet elderly people, so we discuss things, and they're always on their, they get their information from their phones or whatever, but they made a point of saying, well, no, we always check in several different places, and they're really up on it. I mean, and they were so sweet.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, well, listen, there's a lot of movement in youth politics around this issue. And, connect. That's the name of the game. And not via social media. But to connect, do that human thing that AI cannot do, is how do we have that face-to-face human touch. Yeah.
It's a real treat.
Yeah.
Because of the world around us.
It's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, Carol?
So I went to my college reunion last weekend. I went to a talk about aging well. It was interesting, one of the 4 points they made, I can't remember all 4 of them, but one of them was, believe it or not, to have those little conversations with people at the grocery counter, wherever, and they had a word for those little exchanges.
We're not to have them?
No, you should.
Oh, should have them, okay.
Helps you age well.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't have to be a long, meaningful conversation.
No, it's just like Margaret was saying.
Little conversations like that throughout your day are actually really important.
Yeah.
It's so interesting.
Yeah. Well, and they also, the aging research also emphasizes the need for connection to stay healthy and it's not a connection on Facebook. Yeah. So anybody else? Any just comments? Yes.
We were talking about connection. When my son was diagnosed with brain cancer when he was 10 years old, it was so important that he maintained connection because he was taken out of his peer groups.
Oh, yeah.
And during middle school, he was labeled a cancer kid.
Oh.
Why are you getting out of gym class? Because you needed treatment. And it wasn't until he was excluded from the high school varsity baseball team when he was always the top of his team. It wasn't until his 5-year class reunion, high school class reunion, when he had his classmates say to him, "We never thought you would amount to where you are right now." And he was, at the time, he was interning at Villanova University on fast track. Fast forward, as a 21-year survivor, he is now the director of sports communications at the university.
Wonderful.
But when we were talking about the affirmation, his dignity was taken away from him, when he was diagnosed with cancer.
Mm-hmm.
When he was shunned from his peer group, and he finally got that affirmation.
That acknowledgement that he needed, yeah.
At his 5-year high school reunion. And as mom, sitting there we were talking about dignity. And that really resonated about connection.
Yes.
And how important that is, and to be seen and to have that empathy and to embrace
Exactly.
the humanness.
Yeah.
And when we're just talking about being a part of the belonging, as humans, we just want to belong to each other.
To each other. Yeah, that's beautiful.
So, thank you.
Yeah, and your son taught you a lot about that, it sounds like, his experiences.
It was, we learned together.
Yeah.
How important it is, and our nonprofit is about maintaining how important that connectedness is.
Beautiful.
So thank you for
Yeah.
the word dignity, because it was always elusive, I think.
Yeah.
And it really drilled down and understanding his new trigger to interrupt his 20 years
Sure.
from trauma.
Exactly, it was trauma. Yeah. It's a dignity injury. It's an injury.
And you're talking about the brain scan.
Yeah,
And it was
yeah.
like, oh my gosh, he had surgeries and chemo and radiation. So we were looking at this, but there was some dignity trauma.
Right. That usually gets neglected. I mean, and this is why we have to bring this up to consciousness. So, yeah, I mean, this is evolving. Our consciousness is evolving in this process. And the other thing that E.O. Wilson said, if we don't get this right, if we don't change our with those self-preservation instincts and realize what is going to move us forward is love and connection, if we don't evolve into that consciousness, we're going to be in deep trouble. And I'm scared that we might be on the precipice of that. But there are enough people that are doing this work, let me just tell you, all over. A lot of people doing this work. So we can, I think, fingers crossed, and we got to just keep fighting this. So somebody else had a hand up. Oh, yes, okay. What's your name?
My name is Ellen.
Ellen, hi, Ellen.
Hi. Thank you for doing this. It's really been wonderful. I see a lot of this as our individual connection and individual dignity, but I feel a bit overcome by the corporate insult to our dignity with, let's say, tobacco first, then we have the food issues. They're lying to us, they're
Yeah.
you know, I wonder how we're doing with them, because it doesn't look very promising because of the money involved. I have a follow-up question.
Sure, go ahead.
Thanks very much to that. I was having a conversation very recently with a British friend, and we were discussing the sharp contrast between Citizens United, which gave rights of speech to a corporation.
Can you hear back there? Okay.
I was having a conversation recently with a British friend, and we were discussing the law that we have in this country, Citizens United, the decision in this country, Citizens United, which granted rights of speech to a corporation, and comparing it to apparently in New Zealand, there's a law that gives rights to health to rivers. Right?
Whoa, are we far away from that?
No, I mean, but it is a growing movement, and it is, I think it's on point to this. It's the idea of dignity to the natural world, right?
That's the third connection.
The third connection.
Yeah.
And I think that it is a growing movement, and it's certainly something that is, I think, very resonant with the rising generation.
Definitely
That
more so.
there's a notion
I'm
of
glad
dignity
that,
to
yeah.
the natural world. And it's in a lot of tension with the notion of rights of the corporate world.
It's also the unintended consequences that they are involved in, and where is the accountability for this? And some of them are intended consequences, but that outrages me.
Well, so you bring up an important point, both of you, that in my work I always talk about this interpersonal dignity, you know, how we treat each other and all that. When I work at the corporate level, I also talk about systemic indignities that are happening on behalf of the corporation, on behalf of the organization, of the company. And to be mindful, have people be mindful using the 10 elements of the policies that they create. You know, like the citizens, whatever it's called. I try to forget it.
That makes them people, and where's the accountability for them if they're people?
Right. So anyway, the point is I usually go at two levels when I go into organizations, looking at the interpersonal leadership issues and stuff, but I'm often, and maybe even more importantly often, have them examine their policies. Because the policy, you know, if your boss treats you badly, that's just you. But if your boss creates a policy that is going to affect everybody, that's a different level of dignity. That's or of indignity, let's put it. You know. So we have to look at those systemic issues that are feeding in, like this policy that you were talking about. Did you want to say something?
One more comment or question?
What's that? No. Okay. Anybody? One more? One more? Okay, Margaret again. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, see that. Will you go? Go ahead, Margaret. Go ahead.
I'm out of order, sorry.
No. But that's okay. You couldn't see
but I could have felt it.
Well, you go and then Margaret goes.
I just wanted to know how you sat across the table when you recognized someone had such a history of violence and inhumanity.
Well, I told you, I confessed to Tutu that I didn't think I was going to be able to sit at, arm's length from this guy. And, especially after he talked about using the cinder blocks to smash the heads of his people he didn't like. And he just, Tutu, and watching him in action, he was the most masterful human connector that I have ever in my life seen or experienced. I can't believe I had 10 years with that guy. Can you believe that? I thought I'd already gone to heaven. But he keeps saying the dignity is there no matter what. He's done horrible things. And if you don't see it right away, you just keep on digging, he said. Honestly, I never got to that point with this guy. I just didn't. I let him do it because I'm not Desmond Tutu. I know too much. But it's right. Sorry, okay, now Margaret.
Okay. I was going to say that I took a course in organization theory, and the assignment was for everyone to write an example of how somebody screwed them on the job.
How somebody what?
Screwed them.
Screwed them.
Screw them literally or?
Could be.
That's a whole different subject.
Wow. Well, I want to thank Donna so much. Thank you for coming. And a little plant for look at that. All of our papers for rain. And I think we should start today. This school, Weston, will be a dignity community. Absolutely. Right? You get it now. Yeah, right now. We're all dignity leaders. We've been trained. Yes. You get a certificate. You're going to have to email all that. Yeah.
But I may try to, if I get my act together, email her presentation. I have most of your emails, if you don't mind. So you have some of these points.
And the handouts. Those two handouts. So the two handouts that she was talking about, one is the 10 elements of dignity, and the other one is the 10 temptations to violate dignity. So they're kind of useful. People put them up on their refrigerator.
Where is your book available? Just Yale University or?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
It's on Amazon,
Amazon.
Barnes and
It's
Noble.
easy to get.
Yeah.
And it has